Down boy. Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to watchyouwant.com. Thanks for logging on. I wanted you to hear that because that is the defining trait and the signature feature of both the Jaeger-LeCoultre Deep Sea of 1959 and this contemporary tribute to Deep Sea luxury watch from Jaeger-LeCoultre. Now, the golden age of the dive watch during the 1950s, from roughly 1953 to 1960, saw the debut of most of the modern references that we associate with the dive watch landscape. And since dive watches kind of dominate the luxury watch landscape, the two look a lot alike. The Breitling Super Ocean, the Omega Seamaster Professional, the Blancpain 50 Fathoms, the Rolex Submariner. Just about every luxury dive watch of distinction came out during this period, so by '59, JLC was a little bit late to the party. But if they were late to the party, they definitely brought the best party favor. They came out with, in their signature fashion, the world's first diving alarm. Now the Memovox, an alarm complication whose distinctive cricket beat you just heard right now, was actually a 1950-1951 innovation by JLC. And they weren't the first with it, but they were the best. They created the most practical, affordable, and reliable alarm system. It just wasn't much of a diver. It didn't like to get wet. So by '59, JLC realized that it needed a new hook if it wanted to compete with the established players in the dive market. And the Deep Sea was the result. Very practical. When you're underwater, you've got a dive time limit. Either you're going to run out of oxygen, or you're down at depth such that after a certain period, decompression is going to become necessary in order to return to the surface. To avoid busting your barriers and getting into trouble where the sun don't shine, JLC created the diving alarm, and the alarm actually conducts better underwater, so the deeper you go, the louder the alarm becomes. Very practical, very cool. The watch still has a lot of appeal to anyone who's interested in luxury watches, diving, luxury dive watches, or just an elegant timepiece, or even a practical timepiece. This is the ideal reminder if you have to make it to a meeting, a doctor's appointment, pick up the kids, go to the vet and get the dog. Anything you would need to be reminded of, this watch can do. And at 40.5 millimeters, it's true to the size of the original, which was a 39. So in addition to being practical, this is a very authentic, really very sensitive, loving replica to the original. There's some watches that are inspired by the original. This one's more of a one-for-one recreation. Aside from that 1.5 millimeter distinction, almost everything that you would have seen in the 1959 Deep Sea is present in the tribute to Deep Sea. Now let me just say up front that this is what's known as the European dial. During the 50s, actually from the 30s through the mid-80s, all Jaeger-LeCoultres, the JLCs in Europe, were imported into the US as LeCoultre. So the thing to remember is that there are two dial versions of this watch, and the European version right here is one of 959 manufactured. Only 1,318 tribute to Deep Seas were produced after the 2011 introduction of the watch at the Salon International in Geneva. And because of that division of production, again, there's 359 of one, 959 of the other, so the watch is actually a lot less common in either variant than the raw, roughly 1,300 unit production run suggests. This is actually the more restrained, elegant, arguably better balanced dial between the two. The American version has graphics that says Deep Sea Alarm on it on the center disc, so when you're setting this alarm index, and I'll show you how that works, the American version actually has all that graphics turning topsy-turvy on the dial. That little index there is where you set your alarm. Very easy to use, very intuitive, but you can imagine if there were a lot of text on there, watching it turn upside down might be a little bit awkward, especially when the time comes to lock the watch in the alarm position and your watch is permanently cockeyed until you reset the alarm. Other distinctions between the American dial and this one are seen in the indexes, which are here, a sort of piece of corn or wedge pointing towards the center rather than the straight baton index or the stick that you see on the American. The American is signed LeCoultre, this one's signed Jaeger-LeCoultre. Again, this is the more restrained European dial. I think it's a little bit more attractive. Those who are perhaps a little bit more traditional and recognize that more of these were sold in the US market than Europe during the 50s might prefer the American one for sentimental reasons. Also true to the original is the acrylic crystal. This is an acrylic crystal, not a sapphire. It can be scratched, but repolishes very easily. A lot of people like the softer glow of an acrylic crystal. It does have a slight distortion effect to it that's very vintage, very endearing. A lot of people who are traditionalists of 50s, 60s classic dive references prefer to see that in a tribute watch, and it really lends a lot of authenticity to this piece. And even on the back, you can see that the traditional deep sea diver logo is present and correct, blazoned on the back. This watch, front and rear, is a remarkably faithful tribute to the original. So while it's called the Tribute to Deep Sea, it's almost a one-for-one reproduction. There's very little of this watch that's interpretive. If you love the design of the original Jaeger-LeCoultre diving alarm, the first diving alarm, and JLC's unique contribution to the golden age of dive watches, then you want the Tribute to Deep Sea, available from watchyouwant.com. Log on to our website and check out this and our other fine luxury watches. You just may find the watch you want.